ego satisfier. Derek, any ideas?
Just listen to that from the little involvement we've had with translators for borders, and we were having a conversation a couple of months ago with planning deployments, and we was talking about the obvious meritocracy in crowdsourcing, that whole idea of who's our number one translator and that, and they had actually conducted some admittedly ad hoc research, but the translators that they have working for them don't want any of that. They actually felt that would be a bit insulting, that it would suggest that there's some other motivation other than wanting to help, Medicine Sans Frontières or whatever else. So they absolutely have said categorically no, they don't want any sort of a rating or scoring. The other danger was that if you have a rating or scoring, that people will tend to push their translations towards the people who scored highly, which of course then leads to burnout, etc. So I don't think there's a single set of rules we can apply for how you acknowledge or how you manage and maintain the community. I think with any of these, there are people who are going to be very active for short periods of time, there are people who will be less active for longer periods of time. It's unlikely that anybody will stay motivated for a long period of time.
There's been lots of studies on crowds and how they engage on the Wikipedia and many other social network forums, and what you find is that less than 1% make over 90% of the contributions.
Absolutely.
So I don't think the objective should ever be to stroke people. If they want to do it, good. If they don't want to, tough shit.
If you want to quote that and tag that, that'd be from purity. I want to sort of follow on just on Derek's and Kirti's comment, is that I do believe, and we have seen, that there's inherently a high degree of churn in volunteer translation, and that's not bad, right? Due to circumstance and situation, times of lulls between projects, unemployment, summer breaks for school or their current class schedule, people might contribute heavily to translation. Next semester they might have a girlfriend, they might have a heavy workload, and you know what? They're just not translating that much. And so it's okay because it's always having sort of a placement system for volunteer translators. You're not going to find a volunteer translator for 10 years, generally speaking. You might have one exception, but that's not how it works. So, I think I might have some redundant slides because I have a couple different people adding content to this. Yeah, I think I've talked about a lot of this basically. 650 product user groups, groups.adobe.com. They are interested in globally rolling out, not just in their sort of top 10, I think they're in 32 languages right now, but they want to get into, there are thousands of languages out there. I learned, as I tweeted yesterday, India has 22 languages. I didn't know that. And so, what does 32 languages get you? Something, but not everything. So how can they be in every country, in every language, with everyone using their products, right? So I don't think you just push content out and say crowdsourcing, boom, you're done. But it is a step in the right direction. It is access to content. It is needs to be used UI. And you are trying to target through product user groups, through partner channels in smaller countries. The opportunity to get that content in their own language so they can financially benefit, right? We're not talking about a nonprofit here, we're talking about a for-profit enterprise. So how do they benefit? They have to benefit by getting more revenue, right? So we're trying to make that sort of ROI case. When the localization, you always hear the same saw from the localization folks, right? We're getting pressure on our budgets, we're trying to cut them down, we're trying to do more with less, we want to get away from price per word, now we're doing fixed costs. We're using MT in the process, blah, 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 right? Everything under the sun. So how do they what they're doing is they're making a calculation, how much product can we sell in this country? When do we break even in this language? Now, if you simply provide them a platform to say, I don't know, if we're paying $1,000 a month, in this, region for those 10 users or whatever it is, I bet you we can get that content back pretty quickly, right? It costs, what does it cost, $100 a page, 21 cents per word, 500 words. If they translate 10 pages, you got that money back. Anything above that, you're sure to, make money on that or sort of change the cost model. So, publishing electronic content out so that various language users can translate this has high value to companies.
Is there, or maybe you have some experience of this, is there any stats on the difference between crowdsourced translation versus crowdsourced post-editing?
Stats in what way, like
Well,
just quality-wise?
is there any information on whether, I suppose it's wrong to call them non-professional translators because the crowd could be quite an eclectic mix, but
Yeah.
is there anything that is looked to see, does the crowd prefer translating or does the crowd prefer post-editing?
Yeah, I don't have any stats on that. I sort of have more of the ad hoc, anecdotal type of information. I have seen, in general, people use MT with post-edit as sort of preferred community translation model. As opposed to, having volunteer translators translate string by string, or segment by segment. Generally speaking, we've seen them use MT as a first step in the process, and then asking the crowd to post-edit, and then people to vote on that.
We have some experience on this as well, and people will post edit MT if the quality is relatively high. They don't want to have to start from scratch. If the translation is so bad
Yeah.
that it's undecipherable, they don't really want to be put to work in that way.
Yep.
They like cleanup work, but not lifting heavy equipment.
People like to do, tend to offer the post-edit model. So just one of the pilots we did, I'll talk about this. This is all flex documentation, 11 pieces of content, 25,000 words. 21 community members participated. They came from 2 different reseller partners. There was a Chinese pilot. One of the first things I found most interesting, because we're one of the experts in crowdsourcing translation, which means we've been doing it for a year. I say that sort of jokingly, but it's so I've been surprised as we gather data too. And one of the things that happened is we introduced all these software platform to the Adobe community. They gave us a ton of feedback of what they didn't like, which was a little overwhelming. We added a lot of functionality to the software, and then they really wanted documentation. We said, well, we have a help wiki. We have a user guide that's published on the web, Lingoteks help wiki. Sort of the user guide. They just took it and they started translating it themselves. So, a bit ironically, I thought at least that they, to start their community translation project, they took all of our help content and translated it into Chinese and actually republished it on their own help wiki to train their community translators. And then they started translating. And so now they're pretty happy with the software. They understand the value, and they're starting to roll it out. There's a huge student network of Adobe users that are engaged with the partner channel. I think it's about 40,000 is the last number I heard. The one thing they didn't like, which we had trouble addressing from the U.S., was the latency. So we...
in this case, they were paid, right?
No, these guys weren't paid.
Or these guys were not paid?
No. Yeah. So we're working with country managers at Adobe and partner managers in various countries to sort of help. You're talking about how to engage the crowd. The partner managers selected, sort of top tier partners